Thank you all for making the time to join me today as we launch the first ever event in our Pathways to Construction and Manufacturing series, also known as PCM. I'm Lavert Robertson, Chief Executive Officer of All Hands Raised. I would like to start by thanking BOEING for being a key sponsor of this event through their generous grant programs. In addition, I would like to thank Walsh Construction and the Mortensen Company for their support. The PCM series is aimed at building stronger pathways and awareness to living wage careers in the construction and manufacturing industries here in Portland and beyond. The series is intended to draw educators, businesses, parents, and students to shed light on careers in construction and manufacturing as a viable opportunity for students considering post-secondary educational paths. The trades industry continues to grow, so it is now time to expand them and build clear paths to high-wage careers in the trades, especially for underrepresented students. We're able to launch today's PCM series because we stand on the shoulders of giants. Innovation doesn't occur in a vacuum. It comes from the inspiration of the doers and thinkers who came before us. Standing on the shoulders of giants is a necessary part of creativity, innovation, and development. It doesn't make what you do less valuable, and we embrace it. When the late author John of Salisbury wrote to philosopher Bernard of Chartres, he compared people to dwarves perched on the shoulders of giants and said, "We see more and further than our predecessors, not because we have keener vision or greater height, but because we are lifted up and borne aloft on their gigantic stature." I'm a firm believer that it's never too late to say thank you. So I stand here today on behalf of All Hands Raised board and staff to personally thank all of our key stakeholders who have contributed to the growth and vision of our construction and manufacturing work area. I will now turn it over to Ben Baldazan, our Associate Director of Partnership and Systems Development, who will kick off our program. Ben.
Thank you, Lavert. Welcome, everyone. First, just a few housekeeping details. First, I want to let you know there will be time for questions at the end of each session, and you can enter them in the stage chat on the right of your screen. Speaking of that chat, also note that you can collapse that. There's a little bar with an arrow on the top right, and that will make the presentation a little bit bigger. And then last, I do want to just give you a heads up. There are some limitations to our platform that limit how many speakers can be live at a time, and so you'll see us adding and dropping speakers during the presentation. Totally normal, and that is why it's happening. So with that being said, as many of you know, or some of you know, I guess, we have until now done a series called Industry for a Day, which is really geared towards getting educators out of the classroom and into construction and manufacturing work sites so that they can see what these careers are and take that information back to their students. In light of the pandemic, we moved to an online series of events, starting with this one that you're at here, which is aimed at giving you a broad overview of what these careers are and how to support them. We are going to have future sessions and events that are more specifically geared towards educators, kind of more in the spirit of Industry for a Day, and there will be more information coming on that. And now I want to introduce our speakers. Well, you can see our speakers for today up there. We're excited to have them. And I'm going to introduce our moderator, Connie Ashbrook. Connie is the founder and retired executive director of Oregon Tradeswomen and now runs Ashbrook Consulting. Retirement does not appear to have slowed her down in the least, though, and she's been a tireless partner in this work. We are so thrilled to have her here moderating this event. And now I turn it over to you, Connie.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Just a little bit more about me. Before Oregon Tradeswomen, I worked in the trades myself for 17 years, mostly as an elevator mechanic. I'm currently volunteering as co-chair of the National Task Force on Tradeswomen's Issues and on the City of Portland's Community Equity and Inclusion Committee, monitoring diversity outcomes on city construction projects. I'm really passionate about improving the pathway between school and the trades and about improving opportunities for diverse applicants, because it was such a great pathway out of poverty for myself and into a very rewarding career. I believe in the work of All Hands Raised and was happy to be invited to be a moderator and to have previously served on a number of All Hands Raised committees So I got to know the great work that they do. And I really appreciate the audience interest in the issues that we will be talking about today. So thanks again for being here. Our first speaker is going to be Aaron Bouchain. He is Workforce and Professional Development Manager with Associated General Contractors. Aaron has worked for many years to bring industry and youth together, and I'll let him finish talking about himself and about the topics that he'll bring to your attention. Thank you, Aaron.
And our apologies, it looks like Aaron is having some connectivity issues. Give us 1 second. All right, Aaron is indeed having some internet issues right now. I will go ahead and start talking in this section, and then hopefully we can get him back. So we can go to the next slide. So when we talk about high wage, high demand jobs, we're talking about jobs that have wages that are above the median and then openings that are projected above the median. And there's 4 that get talked about a lot, which you see here: healthcare, technology, manufacturing, and construction. And we are really focusing on the last 2, the manufacturing and construction. What you can see here is some wage data on median wages for Portland metro area for these. So again, to the high wage part. Next slide. And then in terms of projections, right? We have 10-year projections here for construction. Next slide, we can look at that for manufacturing. And all of these have, you see different types of jobs there. And about 10% or higher for a lot of these projections for the next 10 years in our Tri-County region. Next slide. When we look at the breakdown by age, though, you can see here that this is skewing significantly older, which means that these are positions that are going to need to be filled. And we have Aaron. I'm happy to pass it over to you, Aaron.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Some internet issues over here. Let's see. Do you mind just starting at the top? Is that okay? That's good. So again, apologize everyone for the internet issues. Just a brief introduction to AGC if you're not familiar with who we are. We're a trade association for commercial construction industry that covers all of Oregon and 5 counties in Southwest Washington. We have roughly 100 or 850 members. Majority are general and subcontractors. Most, about 500, reside in the Portland metro region. Our membership includes union and non-union companies. And we offer 4 core services: safety, advocacy, networking, and most recently, workforce development. This has been a renewed focus of the organization, given the difficulties contractors have in recruiting and retaining a skilled workforce. Next slide, please. I'm realizing Ben probably already covered some of this stuff, but I think we can look at the slide and we can see that there's a lot of financial opportunity within these skilled trade industries. Construction is my lens, and there's a lot of opportunity there. I think this is better highlighted by providing a personal story that illustrates the financial opportunity within these jobs. And so just recently, in partnership with a couple Portland organizations, we developed some virtual events around Careers Construction Month, which is a national initiative. This initiative is really geared towards raising an awareness of the industry and the careers, and inspiring the next generation of workers. We held an online event that featured young apprentices, a panel of young apprentices to talk about their journey through the trades. One panelist was a graduate of Benson High School. And while many of his friends went off to college, he decided to pursue an electrical apprenticeship. He's about 2/3 of his way through that 5-year program, and is in the process of purchasing a house. So while many of his friends are now graduating college, and that's an amazing accomplishment, many are now saddled with debt, while this particular individual is purchasing a home, is building his equity, has great benefits, a retirement plan, and 0 student loans to repay. So I think when you talk about high wage, high demand, it's always great to look at the per hour, but it's always, I think, more impactful to look at how this is impacting young people as they wind their way and travel down this career pathway. Next slide, please. And I'll talk about both these slides kind of back to back. And what this does is really look at the projection of employment within both sectors over the next 10-year period. And I believe these projections are relatively new and have been updated by the Oregon Employment Department. But while the industry continues to grow, contractors continue to struggle to fill jobs. In a 2019 survey of Oregon contractors, 87% of the contractors surveyed said they have a difficult time in filling some or all of their skilled trade openings. Additionally, 84% of contractors rated the adequacy of their local pipeline for skilled labor as poor or fair. So those stats just point to or represent the entire state, and they're not specific to Portland, but I think they really do help illustrate the skills gap that we so often talk about. Next slide, please. So this looks at the aging workforce in both sectors. More workers are nearing retirement, and we don't have enough younger workers to replace them. And just in referencing this particular slide to the two above, the two above are projections and do not include replacement. So this is where we look at replacement. So everyone that's leaving this workforce, the aging workforce, as they age out, those jobs have to be replaced. And we're not doing a good enough job of replacing those workers who are leaving the industry. And another note on this age demographics page is the average age of a first-term apprentice is 28 years old, and that's in the state of Oregon. And that number hasn't changed in either direction over the last 10 years. I think this contributes to why we're not seeing younger people entering into the construction workforce. But it also, I think, points to, we do a lot of work around educating and informing and raising awareness within younger populations within a high school setting. And while we are doing a good job with that, I think the industry needs to do a better job of providing the on-ramps into these careers as we look to get young people interested. If we do capture someone's interest and they want to pursue this career, we got to make sure that we don't lose those individuals as they graduate and move through careers or launch off into that career path. Next slide, please. So there's two slides here really that I'm going to lump together, and this is the demographic breakdown of race and ethnicity and gender within the skilled trades and the construction industry and manufacturing, and you can see that there's a lot of work to be done here. The construction industry, point blankly, just does not have a very diverse workforce. It has and continues to be dominated by white males, and as an industry, we need to do a better job of promoting the industry and the jobs and the career paths to BIPOC communities. And putting into place the necessary measures to retain these workers. And I'd like to just talk a little bit or highlight some of the recent work that's being done around this. One of the struggles, one of the barriers that we have within construction is a negative job site culture, and is really a barrier to recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce. And so recently, a group led by Work Systems and Oregon Tradeswomen and Metro and some of our leading contractors in the city have begun to address this in a meaningful way. And this is taking the shape of an initiative called Safe from Hate. And while the pledge, which is what Safe from Hate is, has been around for a while, it is taking kind of a new shape and new momentum. And this is really born out of an incident that occurred on a job site in May where a noose was found. And so through this initiative, a few things are happening. One is the support of organizations that are working to increase diversity within the workforce. So largely supporting pre-apprenticeship programs like Oregon Tradeswomen, Portland Youth Builders, POIC, Constructing Hope. And additionally, what this is highlighting is an effort to really change that job site culture. So providing information and training opportunities that's going to create the respectful worksite culture that's going to allow for this industry to better retain a diverse workforce both now and into the future. So, clearly there's still a lot of work to be done here, but I do think we've seen some positive momentum. Just looking at it from AGC's perspective, seeing some of our contractors involved in this conversation and looking to be leaders and making change, I think that's a great thing. And again, we have a lot of work to do, but I think we're hopefully starting down a good path here. And then next slide, please. I do want to, since Connie's here, I do want to highlight one thing on this slide. And the pie chart there says that 8% of current trade apprentices are female. If you look nationally, that number is about 3.4%, or at least that's what I found today, of women who are working in the skilled trades and construction. So in Portland, we've been able to double that number, and we still would love to see that number grow quite a bit. But I do want to highlight, I think the reason that number is twice the national average is because of the work that Oregon Tradeswomen has done at the organization that Connie founded and led for so many years, and that work is continuing with Kelly Kupchak now. But without Oregon Tradeswomen, I don't know if we'd see that number where it is now, and hopefully we can work and continue to support Oregon Tradeswomen to grow that even further. I've been told a stat, and Connie, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but something like 8 out of every 10 women that are working in the skilled trades in Oregon have come from Oregon Tradesmen women. So that it's just a remarkable stat and a real remarkable illustration of the commitment and dedication of Oregon Tradeswomen and the people that work there. Next slide. So the next few slides talk about COVID, the impact of COVID on both construction and manufacturing. I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think there's a lot of uncertainty on what the future holds as it relates to COVID's impact on construction. I think what we're hearing from contractors is that COVID is impacting schedules. It is pushing some projects out. Materials are being delayed, but we're also hearing from contractors that they're still struggling to fill skilled trade positions. And from a workforce development perspective, the other thing that we're hearing is the realization that as an industry, we can't do what happened in the last recession. During the last recession, and not to say that that's where we're headed now, but during the last recession, there was a divestment in workforce development activities. CTE programs were cut. Knowing that the industry has learned a lesson there and is not looking to repeat those same mistakes, I think it is a significant development, and happy to see that certain leaders are committing themselves not to repeat those patterns. So that's what I wanted to cover. Thanks for listening. I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Really, really appreciate the shout out. And really, Oregon Tradesmen couldn't have done the work it did without our many, many partners. And we serve more as a convener to bring folks together than to actually do all the work ourselves. So thank you. And Ben, I'm just checking to make sure that people can hear me. Okay. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. And so I'm going to look at the chat and see if there's some questions. Please do feel free to put your questions in the chat. And we do have some folks that have questions as well. So while we're waiting for questions, I'm going to ask Aaron if he has some additional thoughts that he'd like to say about, especially about the work AGC is doing to bring schools and industry together.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more. I think that if I highlight a couple things that AGC has been involved in, I think first is our educator externship program. If you're not familiar with that, that is a program that seeks to bring teachers out into the job site, much like Industry for a Day, I think. The difference being that the educator externship is a 2-week period where teachers over the course of the summer spend 1 week out in industry, learning about the types of jobs, the different types of contractors that do the work, and then they spend the second week learning about aligned training. So everything from registered apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship, community college courses, and then also university courses such as the construction engineering management at OSU. I think the other thing that I can add is and something that kind of gets lost in this conversation is that we spend a lot of time emphasizing skilled trade positions, carpentry, electricians, sheet metal workers, laborers, heavy equipment operators. This industry also needs accountants and IT professionals and HR representatives and a whole host of different engineering-based occupations. And so, I don't want to, and I think manufacturing is the same. I think there's a lot of opportunities here in construction, and it just doesn't, it's not entirely a skilled trades focus. There are a tremendous amount of opportunities and a lot of great educational and training post-secondary opportunities to achieve and pursue those types of jobs.
Great, thank you, Erin. And I do see we have some questions now. So from Erin Flanagan, she has a question: why is the manufacturing industry comparatively slower on the road to recovery from COVID-19 as compared to construction? And I could think of one reason is that manufacturing is mostly inside and construction is mostly outside. And also manufacturing workers have typically worked a little closer together. And so the accommodations for the physical distancing might have been more difficult for manufacturing. But I'm not sure if anybody on this on the stage right now has more of an answer to that. Erin, we'll see if the Boeing folks that will come on in a little bit might have some answers to that. And then we have a question from Danny Van Voorhees. He's curious about how apprenticeships are adjusting their application processes during COVID and in the next few months. And Erin, you might have an answer to that. Folks, if you put your questions in the chat and we can't answer them during the presentation, we will try and get back to you later as well. So Erin.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Danny. It's good to see you. I don't know if I can really provide a good answer to that question. We have a lot of partnerships with apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship. We're not involved in the application process. It does seem that they've moved to kind of some of their virtual training, but I'm not entirely sure what the future looks like in terms of their application process and/or their need for apprentices over the next few months.
Okay, more questions? We have about 5 more minutes to answer questions if folks have any.
And Connie, I think there might be more questions in some of the future sections, so actually I think we can go ahead and move on unless anything pops up in the chat now.
Okay, that sounds good, Ben. So thank you very much, Erin. Really appreciate you joining us today and the work that you're doing in AGC. It's really remarkable what you've been able to do there.
Thanks, Connie, and appreciate everyone taking the moment to join us today. Thanks, bye.
Next, we're going to hear from Carla Gay. She is Executive Director of Innovations and Partnership with the Gresham-Barlow School District. And she's going to talk a little bit about the challenges.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hopefully everyone can. My name is Carla Gay. I am the Executive Director of Innovation and Partnerships for Gresham Barlow School District. And I'm really pleased to be here this afternoon. When I was invited to speak about the challenges that our district and other educators face in bridging the gap between education and workforce training, particularly in construction and manufacturing, a lot of what Erin already highlighted certainly rings true from our experience. And we are really committed to continuing to work on some of the challenges. So one of the big challenges around construction and manufacturing is just the stigma around the trades. As many of you on this call may know, that CTE has a stigma with educators, parents, and sometimes students, where college, where it's a two-tracked concept, that college is for some kids and CTE or the trades are for others, and that there tend to be values added to who gets tracked into those two different fields. So it is a challenge that we are actively trying to address and disentangle from one another, as we actually feel like they are not necessarily mutually exclusive, and it's much more of a multi-pronged approach, which I'm going to get to in a moment. And another issue around that is just the general support that isn't necessarily easily available out there in the community. For example, college gets a lot of focus during high school around things like preparing for the SAT or the ACT or completing the FAFSA. And there's a lot less formal systems in place that push for that sort of preparation into career fields. And so people think that there's only one real pathway and that the others are sort of if that pathway doesn't work. And what we want to do is start to address the values assigned to the various pathways that students can take. And some of that requires some more system level or broader outside of the school district support at the state level and at the national level, and even at the industrial level or at the business level, that really highlights that there are multiple pathways. Another challenge that we often find is that there's just a lack of knowledge on how to navigate the system. Where do you enroll in the apprenticeships? How do I prepare? I often hear from folks saying, my son, my daughter applied for an apprenticeship and it's been 9 months and they haven't heard anything. And there seems to be some serious backlogs and bottlenecks for students. And then if they're 18 years old, they move on to other pathways and maybe circle back later in their 20s or maybe not. So more streamlined understanding of how to navigate into a professional career in the trades is one of the challenges that we certainly face. Another challenge is distance learning in general right now. We have really worked hard to address that in our district. All of our teachers have created packet or take-home hands-on learning packets or modules that we've sent home with our students so that they can do some of those activities at home. For example, our construction teacher at San Barlow High School sent home boats to build out of wood. They're about a foot long, maybe longer, I don't know how long. And we've seen some fabulous examples of that, but it really is a smaller group of the students who've been able to be self-motivated to do that at home without support. So the distance learning has definitely been a challenge for our CTE programs of study, and we're really looking forward to the opportunity to bring our students back on site, even in a limited capacity, hopefully sooner rather than later. Communication about our multiple pathways. So this kind of links back to the navigation and the stigma, which is that even if we, manage to get more folks to believe that there is equal value to the multiple pathways, we haven't really had the good graphic systems to actually describe the steps involved, and that there are multiple ways to get there. We're starting to, in our district, really explore what that means. And that means explaining what the different options are and opportunities, and then also what kinds of careers they can lead to that would, and then what are those steps along the way? So if your end goal is to become a nurse, could you become a CNA first and go through a medical pathway program? If your goal is to become a work in the construction field, then what are the opportunities to have internships on site? And we've had some fabulous partnerships with AGC assisting us with Fortis and Lease Crutcher Lewis that have really helped us envision what that might look like. Unfortunately, COVID has really stymied that at this moment. But we really are working on developing ways to communicate about the pathways that we have available and use that as an opportunity to engage our students and families and teachers in understanding that there's not just one way for students to be successful. Finally, there's just a lot of systems that support the trades that are fragile. And by that, I mean that we have funding systems from Perkins, from Measure 98, which is a huge boon to our ability to grow. In our district, we've just added a second construction pathway at Gresham High School. We're very excited about that. Right now we have sort of a survey course in the construction field, and we're using Paxton Patterson resources to expose our 9th and 10th graders to a range of careers within the construction field. And we're very excited about that. We have a super enthusiastic teacher, but it's always, depending on how many kids you get through and a whole host of things, it's always a little bit challenging to actually build your full program of study. The second thing is just understanding then what doors can those students walk through if they decide that they want to do HVAC versus carpentry versus electrical, and what is the easiest way for them to be navigating those various avenues within a particular trade. And it's often a bit of a maze. We do have career coordinators paid for through Measure 98 to assist our students along with our counselors in this navigation. But a lot of it is really just getting our career coordinators to understand what's out there and how they can better support our students. So those are some of the challenges. And I'll just kind of stop there at this point.
Thanks, Carla.
Thank you very much, Carla. We're going to turn it over to Ben now.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to talk briefly here about what some of the challenges we've heard from industry as a whole. And then we are going to have an opportunity to hear kind of like a case study. We have some folks from BOEING here who I'll introduce shortly, but they're going to talk about specifically what the challenges look like for BOEING and what their responses have been. But talking about industry for a whole, and again, this has already been alluded to, but there aren't centralized and efficient and well-known communication channels between industry and K-12 in the same way that there are between college and the K-12. So that's one of the big challenges there for sure. Another one that shows up is that students cannot apply to apprenticeship programs before they turn 18. And of course, that can happen at any point during their senior year, possibly after their senior year. And that does make it more challenging to have like centralized recruitment opportunities. Also, sometimes hiring practices don't keep up with the current generation, right? And so that might show up as having limited online presence or not effectively recruiting through social media or other techniques like that. And lastly, especially in Oregon, well, and now in a lot of other states, and I would say this is not true for every industry, but we have heard from multiple manufacturing construction partners that they have to do a drug test for all their applicants, and that marijuana will bar them from employment. And in a state where it's legal and where there's a significant amount of use, some industry is trying to see if they can have that not be a barrier. So yeah, that's something that has come up there as well. And so now I believe we have John and David. They are Portland administrators from IAM Boeing Joint Programs, which is a partnership organization of the International Association of Machinists Union and the Boeing Company. It's focused on the health, safety, and development of Boeing's workforce. So like I said, they're going to share the challenges Boeing has had and how they have addressed them. Although they may not be ready quite yet. So I'm going to pause there. We do have some questions in the chat from what's come up so far. And so let's go ahead and Connie, if you can moderate those, and then we'll work on getting Boeing here.
Sure. Well, to respond to Aaron's question earlier, we did get a response from John Scholler of Boeing, who said that my answer in terms of manufacturing being inside and workers having to work close together was very, very much the case with manufacturing and COVID. So just wanted to let people know that. Then from Ina Howe, she asked, Aaron, you indicated that contractors are in need of labor. What are the best ways of finding material handling positions with contractors, and understanding that students need to start at a lower level position, sometimes an apprenticeship, to get some experience before they're really eligible for apprenticeship. And Ben, if you want to bring Aaron back on for that question, I can leave the stage. Oh.
All right. Yeah, it's a good question. Something that we hear often. So I think there's really two options that young people have. One, those types of material handling positions are sometimes offered through the union registered apprenticeship program. So you can go into, for example, sheet metal or IBEW and get on their classified list, and then those individuals are then eligible for those classified worker positions, like the material handling position that you mentioned. That is one opportunity. The other opportunity, I think, is maybe a little dated, but I think is effective, is just simply putting your resume together and start knocking on doors. There's a lot of
Well, it looks like we lost Aaron, and the Boeing folks said they're ready. So, Ina, we'll have to come back to you with that question. And then we'll turn it over to the Boeing folks.
And apologies, we are still working on getting John and David up on the stage.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. And it did look like Aaron was frozen. So, he did have some really good tips in terms of getting ready for material handler positions. And I think in terms of the open shop ones, you had said that you know about the union ones. So for the open shop ones, it's really a matter of going around to the different companies and talking to them. Having for students to have a resume is always a great thing. And they could start with asking to do an informational interview. I know that can be very challenging for a young person. So I know you practice interviewing with them, and you can help them make the connection to various open shop employers. The Northwest College of Construction and Aaron and AGC, those are both good places to learn about what open shop companies have worked well with the schools and with youth and might be open to bringing on a young person in a helper or material handler position. So I hope that is helpful. And I'm going to check back in with Ben and see if we're ready to bring on the Boeing folks.
Unfortunately not, although I do believe Aaron is back, so maybe I can continue that answer from before.
Okay, that sounds great. I don't see him on the stage, Ben.
All right, sorry about that again, everyone. Clearly some technical difficulties over here. I caught the last part of what Connie was saying. I'm not sure where I cut off, but I think two good options are the classified worker positions that are offered through registered apprenticeship programs, particularly the union ones. And then what I think, just reiterating what Connie was saying, was just developing a resume, knocking on contractors' doors to see where they need or if they need assistance. I think the other opportunity is also pre-apprenticeship programs. If someone is looking to get into the construction and the skilled trades, pre-apprenticeship programs offer an excellent training, and they also help facilitate that transition from pre-apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship. And if that individual doesn't have necessary skills or isn't ready for registered apprenticeship, they also work with pre-apprenticeship candidates to find that next step job. So they need a job to build up their skills to be ready for apprenticeship, and that's something that pre-apprenticeship programs are very good at doing.
So I see we have another question that popped up, and then we're going to just answer questions until you say we're ready. We're a little ahead of schedule anyway, so I think we're doing well. So Tessa asked, in your opinions, what would it take for there to be more established communication pathways between schools and industry? And I'll just say that there are quite a few efforts that are starting. One, the AGC does have a committee that meets regularly to work on just that very same issue, the communication pathway, and coming up with ideas and programs. And I'll talk about a couple other things, and then I'll turn it over to Aaron to talk about some of the things this committee has done. So the Portland Northwest Carpenters Institute, they have a Prime Partners program that connects industry and the schools so that the industry partner can adopt a school. And also Portland Public Schools has a place on their career and technical education website where industry can sign up to speak in a classroom or be a mentor or otherwise really work with the schools to connect there. And then the East County has a Work Ready program that, and all these programs will be sending out a packet of material to the participants after the presentation so that you'll have a little bit more information about the resources. So let me turn it over to Aaron to talk a little bit more about just all the many ways that AGC is working to connect industry and schools.
Thanks, Connie. So I think what you were referencing there was AGC's Construction Workforce Coalition. The coalition is a group of workforce development stakeholders that meets every other month. And the purpose behind the group is to align resources, talk about new initiatives, network amongst the different stakeholders. And ideally, we have specific topics that we bring speakers on each meeting to talk about. So the stakeholders that are involved in this group include contractors, include workforce investment boards, education partners. That includes school districts or ESDs. We get pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship programs, community colleges there as well. So the whole point is just to align activities, to leverage resources, to not duplicate work, to share experiences. And it is a statewide organization. We're a statewide coalition, so we get people from all over the state. But there's a heavy influence from both contractors and representatives from the Portland metro region.
And also, I would let Tessa know that the next section after the BOEING presentation will be all about the opportunities for schools and industry to connect. So you'll get to hear a lot more about it than what Erin and I have been able to share. So I'm just checking in with Ben to see if we should.
No, I just got, John should be popping up shortly.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Not sure where we got David. Hopefully he followed the link that you sent. We had some feedback here too that we were hearing. There we go. Okay, so there's a lag.
And you are good to go, John.
Okay, so I'm going to hear myself here. I guess David was going to present this first piece, but he's not on, so I'll go ahead and do this. We're still having some technical difficulties here because as I start speaking, it starts speaking back to me.
John, we can go ahead and work with you on that, and then we'll actually just queue up the next section. We have Julia ready. Okay, so we'll be in touch.
All right, well, we'll come back to the BOEING section in just a few minutes. But I next wanted to introduce Julia Soto, who's Partnership Director with the Portland Workforce Alliance, and also Aisha Ayagalo, Director of Career Link Learning with the Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to leave the stage so we'll have room for them to both to be on here.
Great, thank you, Connie, and thank you to All Hands Raised for having me here to be part of this event. As Connie mentioned, I work for Portland Workforce Alliance. We're a nonprofit here that builds partnerships with businesses and Portland area high schools to provide career learning opportunities, including mentorships, career days, mock interviews, and then also the annual Northwest Youth Careers Expo, which I'll also be sharing about shortly. One of the things that I've definitely come to learn in my work as a partnerships director and working with many different industries, especially construction and manufacturing, that building pathways to careers, it's not a one institution or a one organization or even a one industry challenge to solve. This is something that definitely takes a whole host of partners and collaborators coming together across different sectors, like many of you are here today and you're hearing from today. So again, just a shout out to All Hands Raised for convening us all here and the many partners that have signed on to be part of sharing this information. You know, one of the other exciting things I see about this work is there is a growing awareness and also increased collaboration that is leading to more opportunities, whether you're someone that's seeking more information or you're someone in a position to offer help or resources. Some of these opportunities that I'll be sharing with you, they're for students, they're for educators, school administrators, parents, as well as community members. What we're aiming today is to make sure that more people know about these and can help build a community and familiarity around construction and manufacturing careers. So first up, externships, definitely a great way for existing professionals to gain experience outside their expertise and field. As you heard earlier from Aaron share about the ABC Oregon Columbia chapter's educator externships that they offer in construction fields that have been going on for a few years. It's a great summer program that teaches and deepens experiences for educators and administrators, really to equip those teachers to then be able to come back to their classroom and support their students in learning about construction pathways and giving them some really concrete ways to do it with lesson plans and presentations, as well as those super coveted and highly valuable industry connections. Also, as you also heard earlier from Ben, Industry for a Day is really one of the reasons that I got involved with All Hands Raised and the type of convening work that they do. All Hands Raised is a field trip like any other I've ever seen for adults. There's so many awesome experiences that are out there created for students. And I think Industry for a Day is one of those places where adults can say, oh, can I do what they get to do? So in a normal year, it's a day-long event aimed at educators visiting leading construction and manufacturing companies, organizations, and training centers. While we're all adapting this year to not being able to be in person and creating a lot of distance learning opportunities, as you are here today and will hopefully be on the lookout as well, All Hands Raised is going to continue to offer more opportunities around pathways to construction and manufacturing. So keep an eye out for some future sessions, including a panel with young apprentices and also one potentially focused on demystifying apprenticeship pathways, which, as you heard from some of the questions earlier, is definitely a source that people are seeking more information on. I also want to mention too that manufacturing and construction are ideal places for virtual tours. Virtual everything is kind of becoming the norm right now with all the restrictions that we have to in-person. Though I do see, even beyond pandemic times, these virtual tours will be really great for especially the construction and manufacturing industry, because they remove some of the barriers to having visitors on site, especially minors. It can be kind of challenging to get even a group of high schoolers into some settings, as many of them are under 18. And then it can only be exacerbated when you're trying to bring middle school or elementary school students into these. So I think virtual tours are something we may expect to see more of. One of the great things, we're all getting very well familiar with many platforms that facilitate us doing it. There's also more and more organizations that have the ability to help provide these. You'll hear soon from Asha and the Work Ready program that is also working with industry to do types of visits and tours. And then my organization, Portland Workforce Alliance, we've worked with organizations like Gunderson, Greenbrier Gunderson, a manufacturing company that does barge and marine welding, as well as construction partners. We did earlier during the Careers in Construction Month with PCC Swan Island Trade Center, virtual visit to their site as well. So there's many places to go and find ways to do a virtual tour. They're often geared towards students and educators, but many of this information is also being recorded and can be accessible. So it's a great way for parents as well to start to get engaged. And with that, we know that parents and guardians are very influential in students' lives. And we also know that there hasn't been a lot of engagement in the past with that specific population. So we see a great opportunity there. We also know too that during this time of quarantine, parents are finding themselves much, much more engaged with their students' day-to-day education. So this is something that we look forward to developing more opportunities with many partners to engage directly with parents in the same way that we've had success doing so with students and educators. Obviously, opportunities for students is really one of the key ways, one of the key experiences for students to know whether or not this is something they enjoy. And the Pacific Northwest Carpenters Institute has offered in the past a summer construction camp. They've now morphed that with, in collaboration with the Summer Works program from Work Systems, into a construction trades internship. And that internship is open, I believe, to rising seniors, so current juniors apply, and they can hopefully be successful in getting a construction internship to be able to explore what those options are, work for a general contractor, and actually get paid as well for 8 weeks in the summertime. And then lastly, I do want to share about some of the work that Portland Workforce Alliance does. For the last 16 years, we've put on the Northwest Youth Careers Expo. It's become a rather large event, usually held at the Oregon Convention Center, and bringing together employers and different education partners to help high school students explore different careers. Typically, we see around 6,500 students from 75 different high schools, but really what's still outstanding is the number of industry partners that come, and construction and manufacturing definitely make up a large part of that as well. When we're in person, we get to do a lot of hands-on stuff. There's a picture of some drywall taping that you see there. Students are doing all kinds of stuff. They're using nail guns. They're even doing welding. When we're in person, it's an awesome event. This year, it was really challenging. We did have to cancel the event, but it did allow us to convert a lot of that information that's usually only available to students in the convention center into a digital resource called Expo to Go. So that's also something that's available on our website. And I also encourage all of you to look forward to March 16th and 17th of 2021, when we are going to bring the Expo to a virtual setting as well. And that is going to be a really fun opportunity to try to translate a lot of the interactivity that we see in person into a virtual setting. We're currently welcoming exhibitors now to sign up for that event. All of these organizations I mentioned are all resources for you to keep up on current and developing opportunities. And right now I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Asha Aiello of the Gresham Chamber of Commerce to tell you about some more. So over to you, Asha.
I almost said good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Asha Aiello. I'm the director of the Career Linked Learning Program, rebranded as Work Ready. As I'm sure you can understand, Career Linked Learning is a very large title. I've worked in workforce development for somewhere between 10 and 12 years, and I've heard of and experienced the great work that All Hands Raised has been doing for a very long time. So I just want to thank them for inviting me to present and hear about some excellent opportunities. I'm very honored to be able to work with most of the people on this panel, from Carla to Aaron to Julia. So it's nice to be together like this and presenting. More opportunities to be involved. Julia did a phenomenal job covering a variety of opportunities. I'll kind of wrap up with the rest. So CTE advisory committees, career technical education advisory committees, these are opportunities for businesses to really get involved with different school pathways. And I say that in the sense of, there's only so many hours in the day for a business to get involved. And oftentimes, if you're a very large business, you don't have the capacity, or if you've got government contracts, or there's a lot of different things that would prevent you from maybe spending the one-on-one time or paying employees to be involved in school. But you do eventually need workers, right? You need a skilled workforce and you need a tapped-in workforce. And so an opportunity for a business to get involved is on the CTE advisory committee, where they can advise on a pathway. So if you're BOEING, or if you're construction, or if you are what I found earlier today is JLD Studios, which actually designs leggings of all things, and you want to be involved in fashion and design, it's a great idea to join an advisory committee for a school or for Mount Hood, so you can help direct what exactly it is that the students are being taught. If you're frustrated that people are coming to you without having certain skill sets, a great way to make sure that they have those skill sets is to join the actual committee. You can do everything from find out what equipment they need. A lot of times, advisory committee members will donate older equipment so that the students can practice on it. So they have the skills they need, both soft skills and actual tangible skills, to be able to practice on those machines and kind of get up and running earlier. So CT advisory committees are just a great way to also communicate too with the school districts. A lot of times, someone asked a question earlier on the stage about, how do we better communicate? That's a great starting point. It's a great way to hear about what's actually going on in the industry, right? I know when I ran industry advisory councils, when I was at Job Corps, that was the way that we dictated what trades we had at the actual Job Corps. And the same thing with Summer Works, when we were finding opportunities for the students. I would think that there was one lane we needed to be in and turn around and find out that there was a huge gap over here, since students were actually more interested in finding out what they could do in, say, the Bureau of Environmental Services. Opportunities with Measure 98 funding. So opportunities from what I understand with Measure 98, and there are people on this particular presentation, Carla specifically, that can answer very specific questions. I'm not the expert there, but in general, there's kind of 3 buckets of opportunity here with career technical education, college credits, and then dropout prevention or student success. And so there's money there allotted to the schools and the school districts to help solve some of those issues. Again, CTE funding, you can, with Measure 98, you can allow about 15% of it towards 8th grade. So there's opportunities in kind of the high middle school as well. But that funding is available for a variety of different things. I don't want to specifically speak on that simply because I'm not the expert. But if there's questions afterwards, I would suggest that Carla Gay, if she's still around, be able to answer those, or Zach Ramberg. Hillsborough School to Career Program. So Hillsborough has a chamber program, a very successful one, has had it for many, many years. And their focus used to be more on internships. They worked with Intel, they worked with a lot of that, and they've actually shifted more towards experiences, very much like Portland Public School, very much like the East Side schools. And by experiences, I mean short-term internships or visits, job shadows, very short-term interactions between the students and the employers, which makes it easier for the employers to engage. Again, there's only 8 hours in the day, or 10 or 12, depending on what shift you work. And so for that, it's a lot easier for the businesses often to either come themselves or send a representative for maybe half of a morning. I know Providence does this. They have something called a school to work experience, and so the students come for about 3 hours, and it's very focused on, say, just respiratory therapy. And so they've started doing that with like career clusters out here. And Hillsborough School to Career Program works directly with the schools to provide those opportunities, and they employ people at the chamber so that their very large, very successful chamber also has a stake in it. The business, instead of sitting on necessarily an advisory committee, actually has a say in, hey, we need this kind of workers. I'd be happy to participate in this so the students know what it takes to enter this particular program. If you'll pardon me, I'm very warm. We have our wood stove going, so if I look like I'm starting to sweat, I'm not working out. It's very hot in this house. Lastly, my Work Ready program. So the schools in East County, along with Mount Hood Community College and City of Gresham, came together a little over a year and a half ago to answer that exact question of how do we increase business engagement in the school, but do it in a business-friendly way. And doing it in a business-friendly way meant employing someone at the chamber, putting funds, again, part of Measure 98, part of Perkins, and it's my job to help businesses engage more readily in the school system in a business-friendly way. So this involves everything from internships to job shadows to career opportunities. And frankly, a lot of it right now is virtual, as Julia said. So they're doing a great job pivoting to virtual. Portland Workforce Alliance, Portland Public Schools have done some fantastic virtual opportunities. I've begun mine. I've done about 4 to 5 so far. And again, it's just exposing students to what's out there, but mine tend to be a little more conversational, talking about what skills and attributes. We sometimes hear a lot about like, oh, you need this degree, or you need this pathway, or you need this application. We also need to know what kind of skills and attributes. If you want to be an accountant, that's absolutely lovely. But if you hate math, probably not the right avenue for you. And so it's an opportunity for students to see short videos, like Julia mentioned with the virtual tours, but also to hear from industry professionals, small, large, and medium businesses about what it takes to succeed in their particular program. It's a very easy ask. I monitor and do the recruiting, and then the teachers are able to access it via a program that we've developed with Group Trail and Portland Public Schools. So that's the nutshell about my program and the awesome opportunities to be involved both from the business and from the school side. If you're not familiar with your Measure 98 funds or how they're being spent, definitely great questions to ask. Hillsborough School to Career Program, again, very vast. They focus on a lot of different CTE pathways. And mine, while it is getting up and running, my first 2 years I'm focusing on healthcare and construction, which I'm sure that you can imagine this first couple years focusing on healthcare is interesting in the time of COVID. So thank you for having me today, and I'll answer, looks like, any questions at the end and turn it back over to Connie.
Great, thank you so very much, Asha and Julia. Really appreciate that. And we are going to allow questions for them, but not until after the BOEING presentation. So we'll have BOEING, and then we'll have questions for both BOEING and for Julia and Asha. So thank you very much for all that wealth of information you presented. So John and David, wonderful to have you on, and I'll turn it over to you.
Why, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Hand, and my partner on the screen is Mr. John Scholler. So I would like to talk about some workforce challenges that we have here at BOEING Portland, and what our workforce outlook is like, our projected long-range outlook and the demographics, as you can see up there, of the current workforce is driving the need to develop a pipeline for our future. As you can see in the pie chart, the majority of our workforce is the hourly workforce out on the shop floor that consists of assembly people, electricians, inspectors, machinists, maintenance mechanics and electricians, mechanics, and people in the processing fields, which include fields like sandblasters, shot peening, platers, stuff along that line. So that's our hourly workforce. 7% of our workforce is management, and 26% is support related, training, tech, supply chain, quality, human resources, finance, and we won't be spending much time on that today. Primarily, we're looking at the 67% that we have challenges with. So if we could go to the next slide. So with us, our challenges, because in order to apply for a job at BOEING, like it says in the last, you pretty much need a entry level of experience. And because of some of the viable career paths in manufacturing, it's not promoted a lot in the high schools. A lot of the high school programs in machining and assembly is not in the high schools anymore. So we have a lot of challenges with getting individuals with any kind of practical experience. And then, in the current environment, learning online is fine, but, we really need to develop the hands-on skills. So we do have some in-house programs, and John will talk about that later in this presentation, that is designed for high school and college level individuals, that actually shows a pathway into the BOEING company and the manufacturing fields. So the next slide, please. So some of the responses we have done to alleviate our issues with the pipeline and the workforce is we typically have engaged with the high schools and community, and we have a pretty vibrant outreach program where we have, we have some of our workforce that goes out to the local area career fairs, high schools, community colleges, and gives visits and presentations promoting all of the programs that we have in-house, which helps considerably. We have a lot of interest, and we do have a lot of capacity generally. Without COVID, we usually have a lot of students that we're able to give this opportunity to. We also try to serve on some of the school advisory boards and actively participate in industry for the day type of activities. So these are the responses that we have taken to try to fill that gap. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the internal programs that we've set up that actually allow a pathway to work here potentially, but also to show you what manufacturing actually looks like, because there's in some cases there's a lot of individuals that think that potentially manufacturing is a field that is not pleasant to work in. But anyhow, I will let my partner John Scholler speak to that. So if you want to switch over to John, he will take the rest of this presentation for us. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, David. Can you hear me? Hopefully you can. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go into the student development programs that we actually offer here. It's a little bit of a commercial, so bear with us, but we want to show you what we're doing to get students up to speed and get them developed to go into the manufacturing industry. So I'm going to cover a little bit about the assembly tech prep and what that is, our machining tech prep program, and our college machining. And keep in mind, these are very competitive internships that we offer here at BOEING. And for instance, for the assembly tech, or well, let's say machining tech prep, we typically, that's the one that's been running the longest. We typically get about 80 applicants for this program, of which we only choose 12 per year. So, and these are juniors. You must have completed your junior year in high school. And then you go into the tech prep program. So it's your summer after your junior year, your summer after your senior year, and then the summer after your first year of college. And then they're actually geared up and spooled up to go into the manufacturing industry. And we hope that sometimes BOEING is in a position to hire directly from that pool. So it works out really well. Okay, next slide. So talking about machining tech prep a little more, there's Elijah and Samantha. Let's see, Elijah is from Sandy and Samantha came from the iTech high schools. So the first year of the machining tech prep is a 4-week program. And what they do, they focus on running milling machines and lathes. So they learn all there is to know about that, enough, in fact, to build a hammer like Samantha's holding here. So copper head with an aluminum handle, and they do all the design and they do the drawing on the hammer. They machine everything on it, and every single year they come out with these amazing hammers that you'd have never thought could be made, and these students are doing it. So it's just amazing how quickly they learn. And we do put a lot of emphasis on safety. All our equipment in the lab have protective shields, so nothing can, if anything breaks, it doesn't hit the student. And we follow very strict safety protocol so we can keep these students safe. So that's their first year, and that's their capstone project is the hammer. Of course, they do a lot of other things along the way as they're learning to operate these pieces of equipment. And then on the second year, it's also a 4-week program and divided into into project teams. So usually when we have 12 students, we have 2 students and an apprentice per team to work on a rock boat. Right, so, or that's 3 students and an apprentice. We always assign apprentices to help all the teams. So there's 4 teams of 3, and the apprentices are there to kind of just guide them and help them and instruct them. And they're doing very complex types of machining on these boats. As you can see, what the boat that Elijah's holding, a lot of compound angles, and they learn how to mill it out, so to shave the weight off. And what they do with these boats is they develop a complete project plan, a business plan, and a sales pitch for our mock. It's a mock boat company that we brought in retired senior leaders, and we're going to get a retired vice president here this next summer to come in and be that mock company, and they sit down, and these students come in with a PowerPoint presentation and say why their boat's the best. Of course, this all happens after we go to the river on the non-COVID times and race these boats. This last summer, we couldn't go to the river and race the boats because Rooster Rock Park was closed. So that was not allowed. So we developed our plan B, which was CO2 cars. So students built 2 CO2 cars instead of 1 rocket boat. And 1 CO2 car was for show and 1 was to race. And that was a lot of fun. Kids had a lot of fun racing head-to-head with those. But that's really good because it helps them learn how to work as a team. And they use their strengths. You know, maybe someone's strong in lathe work, maybe somebody's strong in mill work, maybe somebody's strong with PowerPoint and design in CAD. So they use those strengths to their advantage. So it's really neat to see. And then they go away and come back on their 3rd year, hopefully after, you know, they may have completed a first year of machining in college. And this is a 6-week program where they job shadow out in the shop and actually see the real thing, and they get to put their hands on the machines. Actually, and with some tutoring and guidance, they are able to operate machines out on the shop floor for certain operations, because they're now watching real aircraft production parts being made. And it's a really, really neat thing. So they see the manufacturing environment and keep going with that. So the assembly tech prep, on the other hand, is the year after their senior year. It's only for 1 summer. Okay, and it's hands-on assembly, skills, building. So they're building an airplane basically in this program and putting them together with different fasteners. And there's a lot of different fasteners used on airplanes, so they need to use all those types of fasteners in putting this thing together. And they also shadow assemblers out on the floor to see the real life manufacturing process and see, you know, if it's of interest to them. First of all, we want to make sure that this is something that interests them, but also they're developing the skills they need to get into the manufacturing industry at a entry-level position. So it's a really, really great, it's a 5-week program. Again, it's paid. We contract through PDS Tech, and PDS Tech is actually the hiring entity, and then Boeing pays PDS Tech, and the students get paid. The college machining is the same type of thing as the 3rd year tech prep students go through for machining. And they come in and they job shadow and observe and train with a mentor out on the shop floor. And this really provides them, you know, it's all meant, all these internships are meant to complement their area of study, right? So these guys have all taken at least their first year of college machining to qualify. That's what they need to do. And then they come in and job shadow here. And but that's the college machine. And that's all there is to that. And that's about it. Now, if you guys click on this QR code, just hold your camera up to it, it'll give you a lot more information. So go ahead and click on that while it's up and it's active. And we'll answer questions after this.
Great. Thank you so very much, David and John. Really appreciate it. And Boeing has such amazing opportunities for young people. It's a labor of love, but you do a beautiful job of getting those opportunities ready.
Oh, thank you.
So now we're going to take some questions. For about the next 5 minutes, we'll take questions both for Carla, the school side challenges, John and David from Boeing, and Julia and Asha from the opportunities side. And then we'll have just a few minutes to talk about Get Involved, but again, we'll be sending all the audience a lot more information about that. So, questions?
We're watching for them.
Good.
One thing we didn't mention in our presentation is a lot of people ask about the apprenticeship programs too, right? In Portland and in Oregon, we do not hire directly into the apprenticeship program, but the apprentices are selected from people who've hired into the company. Now in Washington State, at the mothership in Seattle, they do sometimes hire directly into the apprenticeship program, just to answer that question for you guys.
Well, I have a question for John and David. Do you know of other companies that are doing similar work to what you're doing?
David? Well, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do believe that Daimler down in Swan Island has a similar program. Not as robust as we have here, but they do have a program down there at Daimler. But I'm not sure about other companies.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I've heard of no one else doing it, but for sure not as long as Boeing has. So.
We do see a couple of questions in the chat now, and again, we have till 2:55 for the questions, and then we'll go on to how you can get involved. So Aaron says, are students from all area high schools eligible?
Yeah.
And I guess that's a big yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
And Janine asks, John, for your competitive machinist programs, what criteria do you use to select students? So I think you probably have quite involved criteria, and I hope, Janine, that you were able to click on that QR code, but it's probably on the website somewhere too that has a lot more information about the criteria.
Yeah, but basically we want at least a 2.5 grade point average. That's what we're looking for. We want them to be, self-starters and all that stuff. We actually bring them in for an interview. So that's all part of the whole experience, right? They come in for an interview as if they're being hired by a company, and they bring in projects, and they've already been down selected because their application was so well done that we'll down select from the applications. And when we ask questions on the application, we don't want a 3-sentence answer. We like the essay answers, right? So, and we coach all the students when they come for open houses and whatnot on how to fill out their application, be as thorough as they can, be creative, and bring pictures and send pictures in to us. So it's very competitive, and they just do such a great job. So it's kind of part of our whole development process, so they can learn what an interview feels like. And they come in here and they're shaking. Some of them are actually physically shaking and sweating, and we try to set them at ease. We give them water and goodies, and so we have a good time with it.
Fantastic. Well, John and David, thank you again so much for your presentation and for everything that you're doing for young people at BOEING. We're going to move on.
Thank you as well. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next section, which is Get Involved. And I believe we have a slide for that.
John, turn on the camera. Okay.
So this slide really outlines a lot of different ways that industry can get involved, or it's also ideas for schools about the things that they can reach out to industry for. We'll be sending this information out to you along with the recording of the event as well. But again, here are some things: donating materials or resources for local construction and manufacturing programs, and for some of the at-home kits that our speakers talked about during the pandemic. Donating time or resources for career and technical education marketing, like graphic design, printing, media space, etc. You have a long list of contacts here with their email addresses, and you'll see them when you get the presentation copy too. Joining a CTE advisory board, we love to have community and industry involved in those CTE advisory board. It just really enriches the whole process and enriches the school and industry connections. Industry could sponsor a school through some of the different partnerships, and you'll see the links here and email addresses to reach out to folks to sponsor a school. You could host opportunities for students to get hands-on experience, both during the pandemic, if you could do it safely, or definitely afterwards. And you could advocate for construction and manufacturing programs in your local district. So there's just a wealth of ways that you can get involved. And we're just so delighted to have the fabulous speakers we had today to dig into this issue and help us think about solutions, give great best practices so that we could build on those best practices in our own areas of activity. Thank you all so much for coming. We hope this was valuable for you. Stay tuned for more information for the rest of the series, which will continue in early 2021. So thank you all so much.